This is my review of the cooler bleeder in April of 2021. I purchased it from full price from Jared. This is not a complete instructional video, just my review of how well it works. And I'll just start off by saying it works great. I'm going to take you through my setup, and I'll show you before and after photos right in the beginning, and then you can watch through the whole video to see it. Thank you. Here's the before picture of my intercooler reservoir. It has about a good ½ an inch of air on top. And here's the after picture of my reservoir fully bled out. This took about a total of about 30 minutes, but it was about 90% complete after about 10 minutes. You remove the intercooler fill by rotating it. You'll see this wire that will pop out a little bit, and then if you rock it back and forth, it comes right out. Once you have the intercooler quick connect fitting in place, then you take the other fitting that goes to the hose, the vacuum hose, and it puts on the top. You push it down, and then you can see that this is actually all hooked up. Here's some background pictures to show you what the setup looks like before I take you through the initial setup from the front side. Okay, I have my cooler bleeder set up. This is the initial setup. I have not used it before. There's no vacuum that you can see in here yet. I just wiped it out with some water to make it clean. I've done the setup exactly the way that it was recommended. This just sits on top because it's a vacuum. I do not have any of the wires hooked up for the to run the auto that runs the pump that you'll see over here. I have the Robin air setup on. Sorry, I haven't turned it up yet, but I have configured it. So let's see what happens when I turn this on. Okay, it's beginning to pull a vacuum. So I have it right at about 9. We'll sit it up. Right about 8.5. Okay, I've just taken the setup off. I've released the vacuum, and you can see what's inside there for what it pulled. There's no difference in the reservoir, but that's what it's done initially. I'm now going to fill this about 1 inch above the vacuum hose over here. You'll see what that looks like in a second. Okay, I'm about to get started. So I filled the coolant up about Dexcool about 1 inch over the suction tube. I've connected this up a little bit differently than what he recommended. I did connect the blue line into the trigger, which is to the left. This little 15 amp fuse comes out, and I hooked it up to the left. So I just checked it, so it does work. I have a cover over here that's covering my positive cable. So what I did was instead I hooked it up to the alternator right over here. You can see I have a good connection on this clamp, and then I have the ground here. And then I verified that it works by, you flip on the on button and you see that light comes on and you hear the pump actually run. So this is pretty amazing. This is like, I think, the 3rd or 4th cycle. It's only been about a few minutes. And already I could tell, and I'll have the other, when it does this, you can see that there's actually quite a bit of, looks like there's quite a bit of air in the reservoir. But as soon as it lets up, as soon as it kicks off the vacuum, it rushes back in. And there's basically 2/4 left of air that's left in this system. It's pretty amazing that when it kicks off. Let's see if I can catch it. Here, watch what happens now. Here the pump is running, and you can see, wow. You can see how it pulled the vacuum, and now it filled it up with the coolant. And there's basically about 2/4 of air pockets left in there. So I'm gonna let this run a few more cycles. You can see here it's doing another cycle where it's pulling down. The yellow light's on. And basically it does pull more than 30 inches of mercury. And this is, I'm amazed at how well it did the pump. You can see here, it's drawing, it's 30 inches of mercury. I would never get this in my other setup. You can see how I have my settings here. This one, you have to set it based upon where you are to give you about 8 inches of mercury as your low setting. And then this one, you just set it in line and it allows it to pull the vacuum. I'll back out. So there's the Robin Air, which I have, which is connected into a regular AC outlet. The cooler bleeder's on top. You can see now it just switched over to blue, and then it lets it drop down to 8. And every time it does that, it seems to be putting more coolant inside the system. So I'm really impressed. It just kicked over again. Okay, so we have more than 30 inches of mercury. Now when it kicks over, we'll probably, oh, you can see the bubbles that are just coming through the top. You can see it right there. So it draws out the bubbles. It's still drawing out 10 minutes later. So I'm gonna let this run for a while. I'm amazed at how much air it's pulling out of the system. More than 30 inches of mercury. And you can see when you get to 30 inches of mercury, it's still pulling air out. That is crazy. So to wrap up, here's the before photo of the intercooler reservoir before I started the bleed process. Here is the after photo of the intercooler after the full process, which took about 30 minutes. Again, here's the before photo. And here's the after photo. So you can see that it works great, and I highly recommend the cooler bleeder.